definition, and the point is for us to have a general overview. And for so far so good, I think we all have great understanding of what feminism is. If Adunola wants to go in, you can go in and also tell me what you believe feminism is.
Okay, Francis, she has said it all is about just fighting for equal rights between females, right to go to school, right to have their own opinion, right to do whatever. What a man can do, a woman also can do better.
Exactly.
Mm.
Okay, that is so important, and I'm so happy that we all have a concrete understanding of what feminism is. It is important that we are not retold our story or our definition by men themselves, because lately what men have been really good with is retelling our stories to us and emphasizing that what they have retold to us is the truth. And you would hear things like, you guys are not like our mothers. This is not how feminism should be. This is not what I think feminism should be. And when you go ahead and ask them what feminism is, you most at times do not get any concrete answer. And so I want to welcome Uche. I want to welcome everybody to this meeting. And Uche is just coming, so every other person have introduced themselves and have defined what feminism is. And so Uche, if you can hear us and you want to introduce yourself and why you joined this feminism class, because I think you were not here yesterday, and to tell us what you feel feminism is in your own word, then would like to hear you. If you're there, Uche, of course. Are you there, Uche? Okay, we're just going to move ahead. I don't think Uche is close to signal, or she's finding it difficult to communicate. But then we'll just go into what I believe we are here for today, including with the very simple definition of feminism. And also, yesterday, somebody asked me a very important question. I wish she was in class today, but she's not. I would talk about um, that. So, you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes.
So, why Nigerian women, it's supposed to be why Nigerian women are particularly low in politics in Africa. And before that, feminism is the struggle for the fight of the liberation of women in the whole world, I would say. But particularly because we're talking about African politics, we'll streamline it to the liberation of women in Africa, which include economical power, the right to go to school, the right to be established and be treated as such. That is the will of individualism, the right to be recognized and to be respected as a person, the right to not be looked down on, to not be qualified based on gender or quantified based on our gender. It mostly is a very broad field that encompasses majorly the liberation of women and in Africa, to be precise. And so yesterday, Obianuju asked me a question, and the question was why women were particularly low, the number of women were particularly low in Africa. And I think I answered some, but I went to do a lot of research, and most of them doubled around what I said, but again, it was expatiated. So I'm just going to read this. Nigeria's low level of women's political participation compared to many African countries can be contributed to several interconnected factors. One is a deep-seated gender role and traditional expectation that often confine women to domestic spheres. It's just like what we said yesterday. We already have a system and a structure that kind of structure women into domestication, and because of this, not so many women have advanced in their political careers to be able to go. And even if we have a staggering large number of women who are educated in Nigeria, more women have masters in Nigeria than men, more women have PhD in Nigeria than men, but you will not see women in politics because of how domesticated men even see women to be in the first place. Also, we have political institutions and party structures in Nigeria that are predominantly male dominated. Yes, You cannot see a man standing up and say, you know what, I want to be president, let me take a woman as a vice president. Most of the times, they are men focused, men centered, and they will operate with men in their corners. So this environment can make it difficult for women to assess decision-making roles, to secure party nominations, or to build the necessary networks for political success. Unlike some African nations that have implemented gender quotas, that is countries like Tanzania, South Africa, they have a quota that women must meet. It's like you share it and say women must make maybe 30% of the government and men 70%. So there is like a balance. In Nigeria, we do not have that. And so there's also limited access to funding, lower educational opportunities, of course, and societal pressure that further hinder women from pursuing political careers. And even the little women that we have in politics, they are often sexualized, they are often criticized, they are often chased away. Like the first female House of Speaker that we have was chased away, I think 3 or 4 months just after entering as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And since that time till now, we have never had women there. And men have been corrupt, have done so many corrupt things with that position than a woman did. But as a woman and you are there, you face so much scrutiny that you'll be forced to pull out, including even violence. I remember a woman in Kogi State that was also pursuing politics, and her house was burnt, her second house was burnt, and she also was burnt herself. And I feel like a lot of women will check and say, I do not want this kind of attacks because of my political position. Also, the broader context of political violence and instability, like I was talking about, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, that was her mother was kidnapped only for just to, ensure that she take down a political position, and so it's really brutal in the political sphere in Nigeria that has made a lot of women, shy away from, and not just shy away from, prevent it in general. And so we are going to go to our main material today, where we are going to be talking about um, the waves of feminism and what we have today. Yesterday, we literally looked at the intro of feminism. We were able to check what feminism is, what we are going to be doing, like a framework. And so I'm excited that we were able to do that yesterday. So here I had to make this public. The video from yesterday is already up. I've posted it in the group, so you can try to check it and to read it. If you were not here yesterday, you can always check it, but I will make it private soon because, of course, you guys paid for this class. It cannot be public. And people who I sent the link to said they couldn't access it, so I tried to make it public. So if you check, you would also be able to access this lesson. So it's just a 20 minutes course because I started recording from when we started teaching, and so you shouldn't have issues trying to navigate that. So quickly, our timetable today, we can always check what we want to do. Today we're talking about historical roots of black feminism. And so please, if you have questions so far, you can let me know. If not, can I proceed?
No questions.
Okay.
No question.
Okay, then I'll just proceed.
Sorry, Obidi. Good evening. Okay.
Hi.
Sorry. Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can go ahead. Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good evening, everybody.
Good evening,
Sorry for cutting you. So I think my connection was a bit bad when you were talking to me because I was trying to respond and yeah. Though I don't have any question.
Okay, so we were talking about who are you and your understanding of feminism, and yeah, so you can go ahead and tell us your name and why you joined this class and what you understand feminism to be.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Uche Ohajikwe. So passionate about women and children and the girl child advocacy. The main reason why I really joined this platform and the class is because I really want to know about feminism and also get to learn different perspectives as to feminism. So that's basically why I joined the class. And I've been listening to you, BD, for some time now. There are so many things I've learned from you. Like, I've learned so many, and I've done a lot of research also, and I can see that so many
of the things I read, they kind of align to most of the majority of the things you talk about. And, using your platform also where people come up and people share their day to day experiences. So this kind of, puts and makes the whole thing sink and makes more sense to me. And this is something we really need to start tackling. And I like the movement because women need to start speaking up, women need to stand for their rights, women need to, work hard, women need to be equipped. Your life mustn't be tied around another human being because you were better as a human being on your own. So you should be able to work so hard for yourself, fight for yourself, expose whatever person, that tries to, treat you badly or make you feel some kind of way in the economy, in church, in school, in offices, and it's so a lot of places. So I feel like that's what feminism is to me. It simply means you just have to fight for your rights, in as much as we are human beings, we are how do I explain right now? So we we all have, like, even if we have different hormones, well, we are human beings and we have blood running in us. So we should also have equal right. I mean, if I can be able to go to school to study medicine as a woman, and you too as a man, you can be able to go to school to study medicine, and we can both, in class, I'm topping the chart. So why must a man be the one heading when intellectually, I am way better off than the man? I don't know if you
Oh,
understand.
yes, I
So
do.
that is it. So equality, equality, equality. That's just it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Obidi.
Thank you so much, Uche. You have said it all. Equality, equality, equality. That is the whole movement of feminism. It's how to be
Yes.
equal. In fact, the society is not balanced because of these inequalities, and because of this imbalance, we have a result. We have it as we have misogyny as a result of this imbalance. You understand? And when they are patriarchal system, it is a direct misogyny is a direct a repercussion of patriarchal laws. If a man says no abortion, he comes to give you some laws, and then you go against those laws, you face things like misogyny, isn't it? Like if you go to meet a man and a man tells you I don't want this, and you keep saying oh, but you begin to face things like domestic violence in societies where you say oh, my body is my body. As a man you cannot come and emphasize that you own my body. You start to get things like rape rather. We're not on TikTok, so I can say rape. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
misogyny, like I always explain, is the direct consequences of patriarchal systems. You understand? When there are patriarchal laws, when a man say no to abortion, he goes to the hospital to emphasize it. And when as a woman, you go to the hospital to try to get this affirmative care, you are sent back, or there are actually consequences for this. That it's misogyny. And so misogyny and patriarchy are two different systems that exist. I'm sure we're going to tackle that. What's the difference between misogyny and patriarchy, and how misogyny is the hate for women, which is the direct consequences of the laws that exist against women that women might not abide to. And even if women abide to it, there's still a direct misogyny anyway. And so feminism is that movement that is trying to establish that there is patriarchal systems that navigate the life of women, and that women do not conform and will not conform to these patriarchal systems, and these are the ways that we want to be treated, and this is how we can be treated, and this can be enacted in the society to call for balance. And so I think that's most of what feminism is, but understanding how feminism came, how it became a street word, how people now understand what feminism is, what are the branches of feminism, the waves of feminism, what is African feminism really standing for, who are the people that have fought for feminism in Nigeria and Africa, how has feminism, evolutionalized onto what we are now and what we are doing, is some of the things that this webinar is covering. And I'm so glad that all of you are here to partake of my wealth of knowledge. And so I'm going to share my screen again while we start, and we will quickly, you know, do the things that we are here for. And so let's go to the main. Okay, I already have the main material here. Introduction to feminism. And so this slide is already available. You can check. This webinar is hosted by my very self, and this image is gotten from Afrofeminism collection. It's a French collection that was talking about the history of Afrofeminism. I like this caption here that says African feminism does not wait for anyone. So we don't have the time to wait for women who are still hoping to grab it, or for men. The movement is going and is going, and we are enlightening people on the way. As we are going, we are giving enlightenment, and we're hoping that people catch it. And we're so grateful for the many tools that are available, like social media, that people have been using to do a mass education for people. I believe that this is the time where a lot of women are now grasping the concept of feminism, and it's useful to the movement. And so the full course outline will be Afrofeminism, introduction to Afrofeminism, waves of feminism, the wheel of individualism, why Africa feminism is where it is, and 360-degree woman, of course.
Sorry to disturb. We can't see your screen.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me let me reshare my screen again. Stop presenting. Let me. Okay. Frances, you wanted to say something? Oh, you already said it. Yeah. Share window. Share this window. Can you see it now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Let me put it on the slideshow and see if you can see it. What about now?
No, I can't.
Oh,
No, I can't.
Okay. So I think the problem is when I put it on a slideshow. So now you can see it. Right? Now you can see.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Then I'm just gonna use it this way. So yesterday we did look at a little bit of context, a little bit of material, and how you understand how the main concept of Afrofeminism, which is what life was before independence, before colonization, I beg your pardon, what it was during colonialism, and what it was for women after colonialism, and the lingering effect of colonialism. But today, Afrofeminism is a movement that seeks to address the unique challenges faced by African women. And so, this could be my first questions when I want to ask you during your mini exam. What is Afrofeminism? It's a movement that seeks to address the unique challenges faced by African women. It also emphasizes the intersection of race, gender, and class. It aims to disrupt patriarchal structures that oppress women while celebrating African identities and experiences. And so, the key features of Afrofeminism, we talked about this yesterday. We are going to look at cultural context, which means Afrofeminism recognizes the feminism that must be contextualized within our African cultures and histories. We also must reject Eurocentric notions of feminism that do not resonate with African realities. Yesterday, I talked about the fact that some white feminism structure may not be relative to African feminism structure, in the sense that while white women are fighting for equal pay and are fighting for the right to properties of divorce and the right to divorce, an African woman is still lingering in poverty. She's still fighting domestic violence. She's still fighting for the police to recognize her as an entity, to even listen to the fact that she's reporting rape. So there's a lot of issues that is pertinent to African feminism that might not be relative to the white feminism. And so they are parts in the cultural context where we must reject the Eurocentric notions of feminism. And now I'm not saying that when a white feminism is fighting, a feminist rather is fighting, you say, oh no, I don't want to fight with you. No. Sometimes we find ourselves in countries where it changes. When you leave Nigeria and then you go to somewhere else like America, you begin to face the struggle of the white feminists. And so there are concepts and there are times when you need to pick one struggle and fight for it, and pick another struggle and fight for it. But because African feminism has been we have been behind, we need to understand where we are starting from, what culture is doing to influence our journey, and how we are breaking the barrier. We also have inclusivity, which means that African feminism strives to include the voices of all women, particularly those who have had marginalized backgrounds, such as rural women and those in lower socioeconomic classes. I remember one time I was talking about the fact that books are so expensive that before you would understand all of the basic concept of feminism through books, maybe you wanted to buy Angela Davis Women Race and Class, or you wanted to read Toni Morrison, or you wanted to read Sylvia Plath, and all of the big names in white feminism, you would have realized that you have spent so much, and you might understand the relative struggle of black women, especially African American women during slavery, but you have successfully not understood African feminism, our culture, and you have also not included poor women or women of rural ethnicity. Like I've always said, if you want to understand African feminism, you must understand how poverty is related to our struggle. Most of the time, we need to deal with poverty to deal with an African, situation, to deal with a feministic oppression. Most oppression in Nigeria are rooted in poverty and in bad cultural establishment. And so most times, even if these cultures are barbaric, rich people tend to get away with some barbaric aspect of culture. I was trying to explain to some people, like the Almajiri system. You never see a very extremely rich president or a rich Muslim man having his child in an Almajiri system. Most of them are stemming from the controlled minds that poverty has enacted in these people. And so it's the same for feminism also, to really push feminism to the streets, to tell women that they do have the power, and in fact they have the power to be able to be an individual, a respected individual that pursues their dream in the society without conforming to the laws of a man. It will take a lot of decentering from poverty, from culture, and from the ethnicity that these women have found themselves to start with. We also have historical root, which is most of what we're going to be talking today, which is the movement that has historical foundations in Nigeria, with significant protests and movement led by women, such as the Aba Women Riot, which is a very significant war in 1929, which I was saying in 1929, women already were fighting for their rights in Africa and in Nigeria especially. And this is an example that emphasized the resistance of oppression for women, to say women have always revolted, women have always fought against oppression, and women have always voiced out this oppression. And so I hope we're still here. We're listening, right?
Yes, I
Yes.
am.
Okay, that's okay. And so
Yes.
this map is a map that shows the representation of women in politics in some prominent countries in Nigeria, and that is why when I started today's lectures, I was able to talk about why women are underrepresented in politics. Now you can see Nigerians as just 6% of women in Nigeria is represented in politics, and Nigeria almost have the highest population in Africa, but we have just 6% of women in politics, with Ghana having 15%, Botswana 11, South Africa coming with the not even the highest. Rwanda has the highest of 61% of women in politics, followed by South Africa 46% and Tanzania 37%. And yesterday someone asked an intelligent question: why is the political scene for women in Nigeria very low? I was able to explain that from culture to religion to political instability and unrest, and we not having a quota. You can check this material if you want to answer that question. Is deep-seated gender roles that have placed women in domestic places. You would be a woman that is moving and shaking figures in Nigeria, but when you come to the house, a man still expects you to be domesticated, to play your domestic role as a wife, as a mother. It quote unquote reduces women inability to contribute. It reduces women inability to make significant range in this politics. And when these men come to abuse, they do not only abuse women because of their incapability, they also reduce it to sexual, to oppression. And because of all of these reasons, women will run away from the political scene. There have been a lot of examples to prove this. And so because of this, I believe the politics in Nigeria has to do better. First, we need to have a quota, just like the way South Africa and Rwanda have. They have a quota. Women must fill 50% of the position. Men must fill 50% of the position. In Nigeria, gender equality is a facade. It doesn't apply in real life. Even if people talk about gender equality and then the president's wife is always organizing something about gender equality, it's as if it's not real. What is in the seminar or the convention they do does not directly replicate into the real life system. And so Nigeria needs to do better with the laws, with domestic violence, with all of these issues that tend to make women run away from political positions. And so the next slide from yesterday, we talked about what were the post colonial struggles, the pre colonial struggle, and the colonial impact. And so, to understand African feminism, you must understand what the scene was during the post colonial struggle, what the scene was during the pre colonial struggle, and what it was during the colonial impact and after. Yesterday, we were able to touch part because I gave a summary of what Afrofeminism was and what we're looking at, and quote unquote just a summary of what the course was. And we looked at some of these things as key themes of Afrofeminism. And so, post-colonial struggles is what it was when we were talking about the struggle of independence in various African nations and how women actively participated alongside men and how it highlights their political and social aspirations. Example for Nigeria, people like Fumilayo Ransom Kuti was part of the people that fought for the liberation of Nigeria, the independence of the Nigerian continent and that of Cameroon. But a lot of people do not understand it. She has been streamlined, her story has been streamlined as the first woman to ride a car. I remember on Twitter, I was the first person that broke the news that Fumilayo Ransom Kuti was the founder of SUG. And if you ever went to university in Nigeria and you had to register under the student union government, you should thank Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, because after she went and she left Nigeria, she was also the first woman to go to secondary school, to tell you how not far these oppressions have been. It's not even up to a decade that Fumilayo went to school. So I'm saying in the last 60 years, in the last 70 years, not so much women were able to go to school. In fact, only one woman was able to go to secondary school in the last 70 to 60 years. And we saw that oppression replicate in many other women. Like my own mother, she was not able to go to school until my grandfather saw the need and said, you know what, no child in my house will be abused by any of their siblings because they are uneducated. Boys will not abuse the girls because they're uneducated. Because do you know what happens when you have economical power? You can insult people who are older than you. My mom was telling me about a story that her own junior brother was allowed to go to school, but she wasn't allowed to go to school. And the junior brother came and he was making fun of my mother because my mother could not speak English. And my grandfather saw that and said, no, this is a family that respects one another. So you will not come and laugh and make fun of someone because they cannot speak English. And thank God that my mother went to school. My mother went ahead to become the pillar of her family. And I'm saying, including 13 children that her grandmother gave birth to, she was the only one that single-handedly did a lot for her family in the latter parts of her own life. And so we also have pre-colonial societies where women held significant roles in many African societies, often as leaders, warriors, and custodians. For warriors, we talked about Queen Amina of Zazzau yesterday. We were talking about the pre-colonial. This should be in front of these. Yeah. So we have the pre-colonial, post-colonial, colonial impact. And so for pre-colonial, I already explained what post-colonial was doing. Women held significant roles in many African societies, often as leaders, warriors, and custodians of culture. Again, I'm going to emphasize the Queen of South Africa, the Queen of Zulu, which is Nana Gandhi, which is a woman that gave birth to the present day founder of the Zulu kingdom. Her son was Zulu, and she gave birth to that son for a man who actually raped her, and because of that, she demanded cows, and in fact, for him to appease her father, because her father was a king, she demanded a lot and it was provided. And when it was time, she was finally married to him. She stayed there for a while. She realized that she could not stay there. That was not where she had the power. I think one of the significant lessons from her story is the will for her to leave. She left there and she dropped her son and went to stay with another kingdom. In that same kingdom, she realized that she was maltreated, and she had stories that her son was maltreated. She went back to pick her son and came back to another kingdom. She moved 4 times. She was a warrior, a gatherer, and she moved with her son and taught the son how to be a warrior, how to be a gatherer, how to fend for himself. And at the end of the day, the son went back to Zulu, condemned back to his father's kingdom, condemned the acts that led to his own movement and the movement of his father. Made there was the year of burning and the year of famine, because when the Nana Gandhi died of diarrhea, he made sure that everybody mourned her, including nobody was able to go to farm, nobody was able to milk the cow, nobody was able to do anything. It was called the 2 years of famine in honor of the queen. And after that, Zulu became one of the powerful warriors of South Africa, leading to the kingdom of the Zulu nation today. And so before colonialism, women have held powerful positions. Women have been treated with powers in African culture. And, it begs the question, when did all of this oppression start? When did all of this, maltreatment and misogyny started? Again, stories like Queen Amina of Zaria, like I've repeated before, and other women that fought for their own kingdom and were not treated as second class citizens. They were trained by their father. So they were surrounded by male warriors. We did not hear issues of sexual violence. And so we have always, asked myself as a feminist and as somebody who is into research and is writing, a lot of articles right now. I've always wanted to ask, where and when did it started to go wrong? And most of scholars and research will always point to colonialism as one of the factors that have affected women in this, concept. European colonialism disrupted traditional gender roles, and they began to impose systemic patriarchal laws that affected women. And what these laws were doing were marginalizing women. It was stripping women of their rights and undermining their status. And for us to say that white women have been fighting for feminism before black women, it is a lie. Black women have also fought for their own rights in the societies. Toxic cultural practices had existed before the Europeans came, and some of those laws were the sacrifices of virgins, the killing of twins, the betrothment of kids to matured men in the society. Some of these, the women not being able to return back to their family house because of quote unquote these betrothed laws that were going on. Maybe a man can owe someone some cowries, and because his wife gave birth, he can sell that child to the man that is owing, and whenever the child is like 8 or 12, the child is already ready to be betrothed. So there were other cultural laws in Nigeria and Africa, like genital mutilation and the circumcision of women, that have already worked against women. But what we were dealing with was just culture. We were dealing with the patriarchal system that came with culture. But when the Europeans came, they brought religion, and then it became worse for women. It was not just okay to be facing cultural misogyny. The white people also brought religious misogyny, and it is from the colonial era you can now pick that the struggle for women became two. Now we're fighting cultural misogyny, and we have to fight religious misogyny. In fact, the power that we had that existed in cultural misogyny began to be stripped off from us, like being a woman warrior and all of those things. A religious patriarchy began to remove all of those things from women. They began to strip women of economical power, strip women of powerful position in the society, and reduce women to domestication. I don't know if we are following.
Yes, I'm following.
Okay,
Yes.
amazing. And so back to the slides. We Okay, why is my slide not moving? Okay. So just to conclude with this slide, we understand now that even in pre-colonial settings, women were never free. During post-colonial settings, we saw women struggle for independence. We saw people like Fumilayo Ransom Kuti. We saw other women contributed to the independence and the struggles of Nigeria. And after that, what happened? During the colonial impact, they began to strip women of their roles in the society. And that was very gruesome to watch, to be honest. And so what are waves of feminism? It is I'm going to talk about just these two for today, so that we don't over we don't overfly from our classes, because if you check the timetable here today, we are majorly talking about historical context, which is the historical roots of black feminism. And so, while we linger on the waves of feminism, I want to share this material. I just want to read this material. I think I posted the history. What is African feminism really? Historical figures, historical figures, historical figures. Okay, let's talk about historical figures, since we're talking about um, yes, let's talk about Fumilayo and some Kuti, since we're talking about historical figures. And so, this article is a very amazing article. You can always read it. It's Britannica.com. I think it's a UK timetable, a UK article. Britannica should be by, it's an article based in the UK, but it's just a very short article on Fumilayo Ransome Kuti. Fumilayo Ransome Kuti was born on October 25, 1900. And so we're just talking about 125 years of history, because from 1900 till now is 125 years, right? And so we're talking about how recent it is. 125 years is not 200 years ago, or 300, or 500 years ago, or 1930 BC. I'm saying this is how recent women have been oppressed and continuously being oppressed. And so Fumilayo Ransome Kuti was born on October 25th, 1960 in Abeokuta, Egbaland, and she died in Lagos, Nigeria. She was a Nigerian feminist and a political leader who was the leading advocate of women's rights in her country during the first half of the 20th century. And so, I thought they were going to put the date where she died, because she died, I think, at around 1974 or 1975. But we're going to see it in the article, I guess. Her parents were Christians of Yoruba descent, and okay, why is this showing me different things? Women's rights, empowerment. Okay. Yeah. Yes, in the first, her parents were Christians of Yoruba descent, and she was the first female student at Abeokuta Grammar School, just like I said, which she attended from 1914 to 1917. After teaching briefly at the school, she studied in England 1919 to 1923, where she dropped her English name and shortened her Yoruba name to Fumilayo. Having resumed teaching at Abeokuta, she married Israel Ransome Kuti, an Anglican clergyman and teacher, also in 1925. So in 1932, when her husband became principal of the Abeokuta school, she helped organize the Abeokuta Ladies Club. That was the first documented feminist group that is like a sisterhood group, which is the Abeokuta Ladies Club that she established in 1932. Initially, it was a civic and charitable group of mostly Western educated Christian women. That was the idea. It was mostly attended by, the people that were educated, the Christian women. It was like a clique of such. So the organization gradually became more political and feminist in its orientation, and in 1944, it formally admitted market women. And so that is why I really like Fumilayo Ransome Kuti as a symbol of feminism, because she started with a high I would say a caliber of women, but she also went to the street admitting market women also, which was the women vendors in Abeokuta Open Air Market, who generally were impoverished, they were illiterate, and they were exploited by colonial authorities. And so you cannot talk about African women without talking about what colonialism did to women. It furthermore stripped women of their rights. It furthermore exposed women to misogyny. Until today, we still suffer consequences of those colonialism impact. And so, in 1946, the ALC changed its name to Abeokuta Women's Union, which is AWE, and it opened its membership to all women in Abeokuta. Ransome Kuti became the first president of the AWE, which was in 1946, and she headed it until her death. Under her leadership, the AWE became a national organization. It also renamed itself to the Nigerian Women's Union. And so today, the founder of the Nigerian Women's Union is Fumilayo Ransome Kuti, and it's still existing today as a national organization. And in 1944, it became the Federation of Nigerian Women Societies, which is FNWS, in 1953. And so we saw the evolution of how she created something for women and how it also became um, um, what is happening? And how it also became, oh my, okay, I'm just gonna go out of this and come back to that link. And so we're talking about Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, not Buchi Mecheta. Yes, some of these links can be very funny. We can see the link right now, right? We can see the screen.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, okay.
Okay, that's fine. And so this is the material that we all should read. It's just talking about her life and how she started and how she became what she is. But then I want to really talk about her role in politics, which is this paragraph, and then we're going to end this class. Ransom Kuti served several terms on the local council of Abeokuta between 1949 and 1960. In 1951, she ran unsuccessfully for a seat in the regional assembly as a candidate of the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroon. At that time, Nigeria and Cameroon used to be power on power. We were colonized almost the same, because there were parts of the Cameroon that were owned by the French, and there were parts of the Cameroon, the majority of the Cameroon were owned by the English. And those parts that were owned by the English almost had the same colonization level as Nigeria. It's like we were colonized at the same time, and so we had Cameroon people in our business and we were also in their business. So she had helped found this party, this NCNC, in 1944. And in 1953, the FNWS, which is the Federation of, remember, the Federation of the Women that became, yes, the Nigerian Women's Society that became that in 1953, she used that to become an affiliation. In 1953, the FNS became affiliated with the Women's International Democratic Federation, and Ransom Kuti was elected the vice president of the organization. So the FNWS and the NCNC became affiliated. All right. She subsequently rather lectured in several countries on the conditions of Nigerian women, and after the NCNC rejected her bid for a second candidacy. Now imagine that you created something and then you led it and went to different countries to talk about women, and then she decided to run for a second candidacy for the assembly in 1959. She ran independently and she was rejected. And so I think during that time NCNC splitted, and then she had to run independent, and I think she still lost. And after that, I think she disbanded that party after a year. And then by this time, her political influence in Nigeria and her following among women in Abeokuta started to decline. It started to go down. And so it is a very amazing story when you read about what she did for women, how she organized women, and how she was kicked out of the political space with all of her influence in the women's, politics. And so in early 1970, she changed her surname to Ani Kulapo Kuti to further identify herself with Yoruba culture, thereby following the example of her son, Fela Ani Kulapo Kuti, which is a very influential, vocal human rights activist in Nigeria, was a vocal human rights activist. And so in 1977, some 1,000 soldiers stormed her family house in Lagos, which Fela had transformed to a commune that he called the Kalakuta Republic. And during the assault, soldiers dragged Fumilayo by her hair and threw her out of a second-story window, where she died of complications from her injuries the following year. Now, this story is a very passionate story. It's quote unquote talks about how, you know, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti rose, how she was a prominent woman in the Nigerian politics, how she created political parties, was kicked out of her own party, faced significant decline of women supporters, and how she finally died. And but the important part is that she was able to organize women, she was able to put women together, she was able to create. And because of this, I believe that every woman can. And it doesn't matter what you are surrounded by, what you have to deal with, what is around you, where your dream go and where your dream don't go. You have the ability to create, the ability to stand, and the ability to be who you want to be. Fumilayo Ransom Kuti's life shows that in many ways. of how she went to different countries to teach about women. She never relented. How she went from stage to stage, countries to countries, table to table, forming political parties, trying to fight and contest in a political position that was not accessible to women. And even at that, she was the only woman, and even at that, she was still rejected for roles. And that will lead us to waves of feminism. Of course, we're going to talk about in total waves of feminism next week, but it's good for us to understand the first wave and the second wave before we meet again next. And so, for waves of feminism, which is another topic, we've talked about the historic context, pre-colonization, during pre-colonization, and after pre-colonization. It's important for you to understand when you're talking about African feminism and its impact in Nigeria and Africa today. And so, for waves of feminism, there's first wave, there's second wave, there's third wave, there's fourth wave, and there's African perspective. And so, what's the first wave of feminism? First wave of feminism occurred between 19th century and the early 20th century. And so people like Fumilayo Ransom Kuti was in the earlier 20th century, and she was among the first wave of feminism. And we can see that her focus was not on sexual violence. It was not on sexual education or domestic violence. She was literally fighting for women to even be a unit, for us to be recognized as a unit, as a community, by establishing the first women community group, by also making it open for market women to join, and to establish that a notion that okay, women can also be a group, can be part of a group, we can have a structure that works for us. And so the focus of first wave feminism was concerned with issues of colonialism, like I said, and the rights of women within the colonial context. We also talked about in Africa, and not in Nigeria again specifically, key figures like the Nandi of Zulu that I talked about, and the leaders of the women wars of 1929 in Nigeria, especially of the Aba Women's Riot, were focused on what the colonization was doing to women. And now Nandi might not be during colonization, she was before colonization, but during colonization, which is the Aba Women's Riot, women were already fighting from the oppression of the colonialist system. And so the goals of the first wave feminism was to highlight women's roles in resistance movement, and also to advocate for basic rights, just basic right, and recognition within their society. So women were fighting to be recognized, and through that recognition, Funmilayo Ransom Kuti was able to open, the first women's communities, which include the ALC, which was the Abeokuta Ladies Club, that later evolved to what it was in 1958, which was the Federal Union of Women. Of course, you can read that. And so the second wave started between 1960s and 1980s, which is the late 20th centuries. Of course, we're already ending up a 100 years, and all we have been able to see is just the basic right, trying to recognize women, advocating for a basic human right, and just trying to check if we are even recognized in the society to start with. And so the focus of the second wave was centered on liberation movements and the fight against both colonial and patriarchal oppression. Like I said, during 1960s to 1980s, Nigeria already had their independence, and we are already enacting the first president, and quote unquote we're supposed to be by ourselves. So what were women's struggles right now that we are now a confederation? Before colonialism, the culture was split. The North was not with the South, and the South was not with the West, and the West was not with the East. But right now, during independence, everybody is interconnected. Everybody is supposed to be represented in a way. And so what was women's situation like during this, togetherness, during this independence? What were women fighting? Again, it was centered on liberation movements and the fight against both colonial and patriarchal system and oppression. It also emphasizes on the intersectionality of race, class, and gender. Remember, people from the north, women from the north were probably treated different from women from the south. We started to fight tribalism and different intertwine of cultures, and what it means to serve on a common table but from different ethnicity. People started to fight this, and then there was also the rise of nationalist movement led by women to advocate their right as part of a broader struggle for independence. So we started to have in second wave feminism many other women like Buchi Emecheta that started to write. Remember, men could not write. We only had a few men authors, but People like Buchi Emecheta already also started to be introduced to school, and she left to England with her husband who was a teacher, and then she quickly realized that she became the key provider, and even with the things that she provided, because she had children and her children were citizens, her husband began to not be responsible. He chose not to work, and he ate off the benefits that the government gave them and what the woman was doing. And when the woman summoned courage enough, because Buchi Emecheta left her marriage, she summoned courage enough to walk the streets of London with her 5 kids or so to start again. This began to emerge women voices in Africa that started to treat the issue. And so, understanding first wave and second wave feminism would further lead us to the third wave and the fourth wave of feminism. This picture is not supposed to be here. This is the picture of Nandi of Zulu. She was a powerful queen that was the mother of Shaka Zulu, the original founder of the Zulu kingdom. And so we're going to stop here for today. And when we come next week, we're going to talk about the third wave, the fourth wave, and you can also use your timetable to see that we shall be discussing intersectionality, race, gender, and class. But that is after we have concluded with the waves of feminism. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I want to believe that today's lecture was understood by all. But if you have questions, please shoot, ask me. Any question, guys? Did we understand today's lectures? Was it difficult to understand? Give me reviews, give me feedback.
I have a question, but I'm still trying to construct it. So, let me see if I can say it to me that's understandable.
Okay.
So, from what you've taught today, from best of my understanding, one of the factors that, let's say, caused the rise in misogyny and patriarchy in Africa was colonialism,
Yeah.
right? So, before colonialism, colon- there was a time that women were allowed to be warriors and all of that, right? So, would you say that there was a time here in Africa, in Nigeria, that women were actually seen as equal or as, for lack of better words, as powerful, especially like as warriors and all of that. And then colonialism came and kind of brainwashed um, everyone to think women were less. And then from there, it just pushed forward to what we have right now that, oh, yeah, men are supposed to see women as less than they are and not equal.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, again, you using the word equal is not. It might not be the right word, or powerful. Women were seen as powerful, and women were allowed in some aspect of society and decision making, and contributions to things that emphasize community in societies. Although women still suffered their their laws in the society that kind of subjugated women and were mostly focused on women, like I emphasized, the sacrifices of virgin, when a man dies, the laws that have to go down for a woman to bury her husband, being accused of being a witch or an ogbanje, being thrown into the evil forest, you give birth to twins and then your twins is labeled as evil. So, but there were not a law that was particular to women. There were laws that the society used to guide them. Like there were other laws that were particular to men. Like men were only to hunt and they went to hunt in the night, and they were the only ones that were allowed to make sacrifices to the gods. And there was some kind of societal role play that was given to everybody, but it did not really emphasize that women were low or women should be treated as second class citizens, that include stripping them of their economical power, stripping them of their political power, stripping them of and just domesticating them alone. It was not done in that way. In fact, in Igbo community, I always use Things Fall Apart, because Things Fall Apart really reflected what the Igbo culture was, and you can use that to quote unquote understand the setting you would see women going to the market. Women were the ones that controlled the market, while men were the ones that went to the farm and brought the food and brought the barn. And so women were treated and given their roles. And even if these roles might not be what we want, they were not as demeaning as what the Europeans brought with during colonization. And so, yeah, there was that. It was not a matriarch society to start with, because when the white people came, they quote unquote met kings, you understand, but in some kingdoms they also met queens, and there were women who were part of the decision making of a particular kingdom. And so when they amalgamated everybody, they elevated men and devalued women. And so that was like the structure that the Europeans came with during colonization.
Okay, so basically, before that, everybody was domesticated, but it was not from the mindset of, oh, because a woman is, lack of better word, the weaker vessel or whatever people say. That's why it's just because everybody was making based on the kind of task they were given
Exactly.
at the community.
Exactly. Like women could even also go to the farm. Like they would spend days in the farm, including things fall apart said it, even my mom said it. She said there were 13 children altogether, and if they went to a farm, you will give you and your cutlass, you stand here. This person with your cutlass, you stand here. All 13 of you start. So you start clearing the grass, you start advancing, you clear the grass, you advance. So there really was no role that said, oh, women, you are so weak, don't come to the farm. No, women had always gone to the farm. Women have cultivated, women have sold in the market, women were part of the, when it comes to decoration and pretty things, and maybe there was a new coronation or somebody was getting a chieftaincy title, women knew their roles. Women were important people in the society. In fact, as a man, if you wanted to get a new wife, you would have to go and meet the senior mom that was in charge of, like when girls come of age, they have to take them through some fattening process and make them, desirable to the kings. They do this like a sisterhood kind of passage, a rite of passage. There were people that did that, and as a young man, you would have to go and seek consent from these people and seek consent from the mother and seek consent. There was a synchronization of how roles play. There could be barbaric laws against women, but women were not treated as completely, insignificant in the society. It was when the white man came, he began to emphasize the fact that men were the head, men were the king, and if they had a penis, they could do so much and they deserve so much. But as a woman, this and that and that, including 50-50. An African man does not know what a 50-50 is. Our African culture never knew what a 50-50 is. An African man is supposed to protect, to profess, and to provide. But when with more influx of the white culture, we have things like 50-50. We have things like patriarchal laws, a patriarchal system that stem from religion, and even from education. There's so many neglects that goes on to women. Even the Bible, people say it's a man that wrote the Bible, so a lot of history was a lot of things when it comes to women are just discarded, and so most of that can be blamed on the colonial era.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And so, do we have other questions? Ogun, Obianuju, Uche.
Hi, OBD. I don't have any question, but I just wanted to add something concerning what Frances said and what you also noted. So, like, I'm gonna say from my grandmother, for example. So, back in the days, like, she used to be a very rich woman. I mean, very rich. People come to her to lend money. She was so powerful. She had lands, she had farms, even in the neighboring villages. And eventually, when she died, before she died, she willed her land, about 12 plots of land to my father, because my father was her last child amongst about 13 children. So back then, just like you said, women had that power, women had that, structure, women were heard, women were valuable, unlike what it is today. So it's more like the colonial coming and all of that really affected the whole system, which used to be the way it used to be back then. So my grandma then, she had a bicycle. She was like one of the first women that got bicycle in the community.
Exactly.
Look, people come to meet her, like she has this palm wine tapping, whatever. So back then women were so powerful. So in conclusion, I feel like this whole colonial coming into our country and our system really affected a lot. And also religion also has a place, he played into all of this, because if you look at it, some people will tell you, what, as a woman, you should not be the head of a church, or a woman cannot head a church. It is an abomination. I don't know where they got that kind of, information from, or where they just got that kind of a law from. So back in the days, women had communities when, even when they want to pray, they call women pray, because women were seen like, in the Igbo culture, women were regarded as gods. You understand me? They'll tell you, you don't just go to a woman and, you maltreat her, or you do the woman anyhow. It's going to kind of like have like an adverse effect on you, because women were so reverenced. I mean, women were seen like gods. They would tell you, oh, when you go into a woman and you do something that is so bad, if that woman should open her mouth to, like, lay curses on you, those things automatically is going to affect you. But I don't know what is going on right now, and how the whole thing we used to know back then are no longer what it is today. From my grandma's story and my grandpa and every other person, like every other older women I got to see before they passed on, you know, I could see that they were not talked down on. They were very powerful. They were respected, But unlike today, the whole thing has, changed. When a woman tries to speak up, and then the next thing they go telling you, oh, close your mouth, you ashawo, you this, you that, or trying to like equate a woman's power or riches. So, she slept with a man for her to, make such kind of a money, or the status where she, is at a point. So I feel like the pre-colonial whatever actually has like a lot of effects on this whole, situation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for that contribution. That was so powerful. I felt like, yeah, even just to bring back this story, the Igbo women used to wear the hocks of elephants, or there's this, you get to know which of them is royalty or which of them is not royalty. They get to wear the husk, and women wore it, and it was a really powerful symbol for women, and everybody was respected, just like what she has said. There were women in the community that were referenced. They were given high significant power because they were of that kind of power. They had people that worked for them. I don't want to call them slaves, but they had maids around. They had the power to speak to the king. They were the ones that organized the market women. So in every community they had these powerful women leaders. It was up until colonization happened, and then men were going to school, because it was colonization that brought a lot of westernization. And westernization, it includes people going to school. Roles that were different from farming and hunting began to show up, like being a doctor, being a soldier, being a police. And these roles were roles that give economical power. You have more money because now you're working for the white man at that time, and there were not so much people. And so with how more of westernization came through colonization, men were given more opportunities than women. And because men were given more opportunities than women began to slide down their powerful position. And so when you come to a community where a woman used to have goats, like my grandmother had so many goats, and she was just like the way people come to borrow from your grand, they also came to borrow from my grandma. She had so many, and it's just like that. But it began to reduce, because now people began to pay respect to the man who is an old policeman and is coming with a car. Your grandmother does not have a car. So people now shifted what economical power was to being a man and being his own, how will I say it, his own class, what he was being able to achieve through colonialism, by the way. Do not forget that most of them got these favors from the colonization era. And so, in fact, looking at it is a really big story, from what first wave of feminism to this point is. And that is why most of this knowledge is so important. We don't argue blindly, because we just shouldn't. And so, if we don't have much to say, guys. Okay, Frances, please, let's hear you.
Okay, so I have another question. Now that we've talked about this,
Yeah.
so the whole idea behind, or in the time where, the period where when a man marries a woman, he has to come and show the family the blood, that she's a virgin, all of that. So was that also during colonial time or post-colonial, or was that like pre-colonial time?
So that was mostly pre-colonial. That was pre-colonial. That was before the the white people came, and I think that most of those culture even started to become abolished. And again, the colonialism also had its own advantages in the sense that they abolished, Mary Slessor came and abolished the killing of twins. They also were, a lot of harmful religion practices that they started to help enact. You understand? But that blood thing was also a pre-colonization era. People were using it to show purity, and most of the times this worked because we were not in a community that there's so many people right now. If there was a young girl, there's most likely the boys in her age grade were not much. The society were like maybe 100 people, and inside that 100 people there may be 20 children and 30 old men and 30 old women. And so the age range of people at that time were not much. Just like now that we have so many, you have social media, you can meet men from everywhere. In a community at that time, the young girl and the young guy, they were not mostly much. In fact, the girls needed to pass through some rite of passage, and the men also needed to go through some rite of passage. It's like even in Things Fall Apart, they said you have to spend like maybe a week or 10 days in some bush trying to emphasize that you are truly a man, and as a woman you need to spend sometimes in a room or some fattening house to truly emphasize that you are a woman. So both of them know each other and they are prepared. So this virgin lady is prepared for this handsome guy who has gone through a hunting and has gone through the passage of right to be a man and is able and is qualified by societal standards that he is ready to provide a home for this person. So it was easy to stick to the laws, to be able to have sex and see the hymen or whatever that happened at that time. But for whatever reason that culture was held, it was before colonization.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And so most of them, most of those practices happen till today. Like you meet somebody and they'll say, "Oh, where's the blood in your hymen?" Oh my God, there's no blood in the hymen right now because we do so many activities. We take so many foreign drugs. In fact, some of us were molested as kids. Some of them, the hymen is gone. And naturally, people say the hymen is an illusion. Of course, there are hymen in a woman, but not every sexual intercourse bring out the passage of blood. And so I believe most of them were so barbaric because a lot of women that did not have hymen, they were castigated and said they were not virgins. And for those who had and the blood could come out, oh, they would have to spray the white clothes in front of the house and say, "Oh my God, I married her pure." And so some of these barbaric cultures were detrimental to women itself. And that is why when I spoke about the oppression that women were fighting for before colonization, it was, most of dangerous laws that include this blood thing as a virgin, your baby being thrown away after going through a lot for 9 months. They say, "Oh, you're a witch, that's why you gave birth to twins because twins are bad for the society," or whatever. And then so many of the laws that actually kept women at risk. But even if we had this so much barbaric laws, religion came and made it worse. And then they started to use the Bible as a yardstick. Oh, the Bible said as a woman, if you're menstruating, you cannot talk, you cannot speak to your man. And then they use the submit. You must be submissive. You must submit to me in good and in bad. And even when I'm providing and when I'm not providing, they had to use the submissive as an excuse for oppression for women during colonization and post-colonization. But before that time, many women found a way. Even I think I was watching a Nigerian movie where they were looking for virgins to sacrifice, and most women were trying to disvirgin their daughters because women still found a way around, fighting those cruel laws and how they navigated it. And so I felt like even if the structure was against women at that time, maybe women had a way of overcoming those laws that did not make them to resist the oppression as much. But when the colonization came and they were telling women to submit, on top of that, they wanted women to also provide, and they were also taxing women. I think the About Women riot was just a direct result of how harsh the colonization rules were for women back in the days.
So basically, these laws were not from the point of misogyny there from just from the point of ignorance of the
Yeah.
woman's body.
Yes, most of them were ignorant laws because when religion came, people really believed so much in colonization and religion that they were letting go of some barbaric laws, like the killing of twins. They had to let that go, and some other cultures that have been going till today. You understand, like that purity culture. I don't think a lot of people still do purity culture till today. People want a virgin, but what yardstick do you know that this person is a virgin? You get what I mean? They still want to use the blood as a test, but of course, these are not factual. They are mythology. Half of the women don't even have hymen. Some of them lost it by mistake, by accident, by running, by a lot of heavy period. So there are reasons why people lose hymen, and so it was just ignorance of a woman's body, to be honest, than it was enforcing it out of misogyny. Because even if women stuck to these rules or they did not stick to these rules, we did not see any direct consequences for women who disobeyed. Like I said, if I read Things Fall Apart very well and other old books, I did not really come in contact with a direct consequence for women who do these things. Of course, they could be returned to their mother's house or many things, but as a man, you were required for you to return the bride price or for you to do some kind of ritual. So there's a lot that must be taken into account for you to undo the law at that time. And so, but when the European came with their laws, there was not much consequences. All you needed to be is a man and command and beat, and you are good to go. And so at that time, during the religion began to suppress culture, and even the suppression of culture by religion did not do any good for women in either ways. We were living, it's just like fry pan to fire. That's what was happening to women at the time. Until today, we are still being burnt by some of the European laws that are still in effect today.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I hope I've been able to answer some of these questions in my own little way, but um, I believe feminism is a really broad topic. It's so broad. It's like you just have to go small. Thank God some of us, we are all young here and we have all of the time in the world to learn about feminism and to fight as we continue to go. And so if we have no more questions, I'm going to call this a day. This is a recorded class. I'm going to upload it on YouTube right immediately after this class, and I'll make it public. So if you want to go back and read it, you can always go back and read or listen, to this material. And so, if you have any last contribution that you want to say before we end this class, please go ahead. Okay, if no contribution, I'm going to say goodbye to you and see you next week, Monday, same time, same link. All right? Have a wonderful day.
Bye,
Thank you.
OBD. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye bye.